no numbers, there's no pictures, there's no videos, there's no gameplay. I don't like it.
Yo, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. Today, we're going to continue with Samurai Stories. We're going to get into Forged. So Forged is a story just about the, I would say, like, because there's two different types of jobs in Free Realms. I mean, I guess you could say, like, it's not a job, but there is one specific job that relates to this story. So the smithing job, I want to basically write a story about mechanics and smithing in a story sense, because looking at TCG art, it's kind of the reason why I wrote Burnout. Burnout has all this artwork, all these different cards relating to kart racing, and it's wild to me because it shows, like, this is how much, like, for the people that did the art and for the people who wrote the cards, they cared that much about that specific job. And while there wasn't a mechanic job, there was a lot of, like, smithing, different artworks. So yeah, that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this. And I believe the next story after this, it's either the next story after this or the next story, but yeah, there's just, like, when there's a lot of artwork relating to a certain job or certain characters, certain race, I just kind of want to do stories based off of those. So yeah, that's why I did this one. But anyway, let's get into it. Every day I continue to strike the anvil. With each strike against it, I feel as though I am what I'm creating. Like my father, I will wield the hammer and man the smithing station till my flames are extinguished. I look at the hammer he gave to me when I was younger, and to me, he said, "It is not the tool that makes the person, it is the person that makes the tool." As simple as it sounded, it still reminds me that I am human, regardless of the struggles we go through. As I was about to take a break from smithing, I heard something fall onto the porch. I picked it up and tried to figure out what it was. It looked different from what I'm used to working with, so I decided to ask around town for some info. So, this little object that this guy's holding, which we're gonna get into his name in a second. It's this it's like a weird looking gear, and this is like the first piece of art, and I looked down, like, should I make a story around this? Because he's just staring at it, like, puzzling, and it's like the only piece of artwork that, like, stood out to me that was like, could write a story based off of that. So let's continue. I started by asking Callum, a friend of my dad, for some help. I waved and he said, "Jax, good to see ya." I smiled and asked, "Same to you. It's been too long. How goes the smithing?" So his name's Jax, a name I made up. Same thing with Callum. Like, I think a lot of these names I made up -1. I made up because not a lot of the cards are named. So anyway, let's continue. He shrugged and said, "Could be better, but my Hobgoblin friend here keeps trying to assist. But he got way too close to the anvil." The Hobgoblin sitting in the chair and coughed and asked, "Why are there 12 of you?" I laughed and said, "Smithing is dangerous business. Now, on to the reason I'm here." I handed Callum the gear from my porch, and he said, "What a funny little gizmo. Never seen it before, but I'm sure it's used for something." I frowned and asked, "Do you know anyone who might know what it is?" He thought for a moment and said, "Maybe Nervy might know. She dabbles in smithing and engineering." I smiled and said, "Didn't know she was back in town. I think I'll go and see her. Thanks for the help, Callum." He smiled and waved. "Anytime, Jax. Tell Nervy I said hi." I nodded and took a walk to her house. The last time I saw Nervy was before my father passed away. She left town on a contract in Shrouded, and that was 2 years ago. Maybe you wonder why she decided to come back after all this time. So, Nervy, for those who don't know, and if you've read Luck of the Draw, you'll know. If you haven't read Luck of the Draw, go read it. But for context, Nervy is a character from Luck of the Draw. She played a character, like, she played a role in Dark Cheat's story, kind of at the beginning of the story. She was a blacksmith over at Shrouded Glade, And I wanted to make kind of a backstory on, hey, you know, why did she go there in the first place? Why was she there? And she was there on contract. So, yeah. And I wanted to bring her back into the fold of the story because how her story goes, she witnesses her Dark Cheat's like beginning, like his whole like how he becomes a villain type of deal. She witnesses all of it. And it's just kind of wild. So I was like, okay, so I want to bring this character back for this story because she's relevant to it, and you know, it could be nice to just like continue on with her story because it felt like, you know, she wasn't much of a character. Like any character that I didn't really expand upon, this was the time to do so. So anyway, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's keep going. I knocked on her door, and when it opened, she didn't look happy to see me. I tilted. Nice. I knew I was gonna misspell that, dude. I had a feeling. Boom. Fix. Easy. I tilted my head and asked, "Why the long face, Nervy? It's me, Jax, your neighbor. Don't you remember me?" She nodded and said, "I was hoping to be left alone, but since I got back, everyone's been stopping by to see me." I'm gonna do a country accent for her because I don't know how I've been doing country accents for most of these. She nodded and said, "I was hoping to be left alone, but since I got back, everyone's been stopping by to see me." I frowned and said, "I'm sorry. If you want, I can leave." She shook her head and said, "Jackson, I haven't seen you in years. Please come in." I entered her home and looked around for a bit. By the looks of things, her house didn't change much. Still looked the same, just a little more messy than usual. She looked at me nervously and said, "Sorry about the mess. There's been so much on my mind lately that I haven't had the time to organize." I laughed and said, "You're fine, Nervy. In our profession, I'd be shocked if we ever had everything neat and perfect in one place to find." As soon as I said that, I heard a noise from one of the back rooms. The golem started swinging from the rafters of Nervy's house, and I stepped back a bit as I was startled. I turned to Nervy and asked, "What is that?" She smiled and said, "That would be Bobo." "Oh, that would be Bobo. He's my helpful steam monkey." I scratched my head and asked, "I've never seen anything like it. I also don't remember you having anything like it a couple years ago." She nodded and said, "I built him while I was up at Trotter Glade. I used to have a dwarven assistant until..." Her thoughts trailed off like she didn't want to talk about her past. So there's context here. So when Nervy appeared in Dark Cheat's story, Dark Cheat, I didn't really expand on like their relationship at all, like if they had one to begin with. But I thought, like, you know, why not? Let's expand on that. So I did it here. Dark Cheat was that dwarven assistant because I'm assuming, you know, just thinking about it in my head, I was like, maybe he helped her out at times because, you know, they were. It seemed like they were close in Luck of the Draw, but it wasn't really. You know, I didn't make it clear at all. But yeah, so she built this monkey, and by the way, the steam monkey has Bobo's actually his name. It's not something I made up. It's in the TCG card. And what's funny is this worked out perfectly because in the TCG card, it lists, and I can find it really quickly because it's super easy. Let's look real quick here. So it's going to be helpful steam monkey. Yep. So yeah, it says here in the subtext, it says, "I used to have a dwarven assistant, but Bobo is so much better, Nervy." So from that, I could infer that Nervy, the hero, and Nervy is a hero card. This is her steam monkey. It's hers. So there is like, it was so perfect to not put this in here. There's a story there, and it's wild, like how well this was put together. Because I mean, when I looked up Nervy, I never looked into the Sea Monkey. So seeing this during writing of this, crazy bonkers. Okay, we'll just say that because that's just perfect. You know, that's crazy. Anyway, let's get back into it. I didn't want to ask about it, so I pulled the gear out of my pocket and said, So, about the reason I stopped by, while I did want to see you since it's been a bit, I wanted to know if you knew what this was. I handed her the gear and she said, "Ah, this is what I used to make Bobo. It's like the motor that makes a golem function." She knows something inside the gear and pulled out a piece of paper. Then she handed it to me. I looked at it and it read, "Hey Jax, I know things might not be easy for you when I'm gone, but I figured you could use some help. Once you learn what the gear does, you'll know what to do. Don't let the forge go out. Love, Dad." I started to tear up as I read the note and put it in my pocket. Nervy put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Come with me. There's a couple people we can ask about the gear. You might find what you're looking for." We walked over to a local shop to find a golem that might suit what I needed in an assistant. A guy looking over at a blueprint saw us and said, accent for this? I feel like I'm not gonna have a good one. This is gonna be so bad. "Welcome on in. Feel free to browse or ask me for anything you need." I nodded and asked, "I'm actually looking to build a golem to help me around the place. Got anything here that I could work with?" He nodded and said, "We do, but you could always invest in what I am working on. As long as you've got the gear to make a golem, I could finally finish building my bowl." He showed me the schematics to build his bowl. As I read over them, Nervy peeked over my shoulder and said, "Looks like there's a problem with your design. If you do manage to construct this, there's a chance the golem could lose control and go berserk over the whole town." So, funny enough, I did write this in. I was going to add more story to this and more artwork, but I thought the story would have been too long and too crazy. Like, there's at least 3 things of artwork of this, like, mechanical bowl in TCG, and I was like, I could do something with this, but I didn't really see the point. So I didn't add anything into it. I kind of just wanted the story to be simple. But yeah, let's keep going. He scratched his head and said, "You've got to the point there. I didn't consider the implications of a bull going crazy, since it'd be mechanical and all." She smiled and said, "Well, I'm glad I caught it. It's good to catch these things early before you finish the build." He sighed and said, "I guess I'll rework the design, but I recommend you head to the back room for a different golem design. My wife can assist you in finding what you need." I nodded and said, "Appreciate the help. Hope you're able to build the perfect golem." He smiled and said, "I hope so too." We went back to the part of the store to find a mechanic tinkering with old parts. I turned my head and asked, "What are you trying to build?" She nearly jumped and said, "It's rude to sneak up on people like that. If you must know, it's not what I'm trying to build, it's what I'm trying to repair." She showed us what looked to be a small golem that almost resembled a person. She looked at it and said, "I've been tinkering with this golem for years and haven't found the missing piece to finally repair him." I looked at the golem and saw a slot inside of its chest. I took the gear out of my pocket and handed it to her. I can't type. It's, times are tough. There. Gaming. Okay. And handed it to her, then asked, "Would this do the trick?" She took the gear from my hands and observed it, then placed it inside the golem's chest. Like flipping on a light switch, the golem powered on and sprung to life. She smiled and said, "After all these years, you had the part to get him moving again. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." I looked at the golem nervously and asked, "Well, I was hoping to find a golem to help out around my shop, but your golem has the part I was going to use to make one." She looked at him and said, "Why don't you take him off of my hands? You need him more than I do, and I was just happy to see him come to life again." I scratched my head and said, Are you sure? I don't know if I should, considering the years you've spent repairing it." She nodded and said, "I insist. You'll be a great help, I can assure you." As she said this, the golem repeatedly walked into one of the shop walls. I sighed and said, "I suppose I'll have to take your word for it." I carried the golem out of the shop and thanked the couple on my way out. Nervy looked at me and said, "That was really nice of her. I don't know if I could part ways with Bobo like that." I looked at the golem and said, "I think she cares more about the people around her than her own personal needs. In any case, it'll be nice to have some help around the place." Nervy nodded and stayed silent for most of our walk back. I cleared my throat and asked, "So, I didn't want to ask earlier, but back at your house you mentioned having a dwarven assistant. What happened to him?" She sighed and said, His name was Baron. He was an apprentice at Shrouded Glade, and at the time, I thought he was a good friend. She was breathing heavy, pacing back and forth, looking for an excuse not to say more. She looked at me and said, there was another apprentice by the name of Ree, and one day they were doing this final exam. Baron casted a spell that I helped create on Ree during the exam. The spell he casted set Ree on fire, and Ree didn't survive. Baron was expelled from the academy, and that's when I made the choice to leave the academy as well. So, Nervy gives Jax some backstory on, like, hey, this is why I came back. But yeah, what's funny though, it's funny that Ree, like, in one video I did reacting to the one of the videos that FRS dropped, Ree was like floating next to a farm, which was super odd, and I was like, how? Like, there's no way. It also, it's just funny that he's near a farm and not in Shrouded Glade, but, you know, hey, I'm just writing here, all right? I don't know how things looked in game. I don't remember how they looked in game, but anyway, let's keep going. I sat on my porch and said, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Sounds like that dwarf was corrupt in all the worst ways, but you made the right choice to leave. She sat next to me and said, it took me a while to come back here because I wanted to explore Sacred Grove. Take my mind off of things. Oh, it took me a while to come back here because I want to explore Sacred Grove. Take my mind off of things. Gotta stay in character. I smiled and said, well, I'm glad you're back, Nervy. It's not the same without you. She smiled back and said, that means a lot, Jax. I'm happy to be back here. I hope that golem works out. I turned to see the golem walking into the door to the house and said, oh, for crying out loud. She laughed and said, I'll see you around, Jax. She went home and I was left with my silly little golem. He reminded me of my father in the way he stumbled around aimlessly looking for something to work on. I know that the golem and I are going to make a great team no matter what obstacle lies in our path. So, kind of again, simple story, but I think it was important to tell mainly because of Nervy, but also because I did want to tell the story. I don't even, there's so many different artworks of all the engineers and blacksmiths, and there's like, I could have told like an even bigger story, but I thought this was perfect. It was good. I think I did forget to mention that the last one I did, Alteration, there wasn't really a connect. It was kind of just a random mix of stories that didn't connect to the Golem Invasion at all. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I'm mentioning it now just to say it. And I believe the next story doesn't mention the Golem Invasion at all, I believe. Yeah, it's just completely on its own. So there's like 2 stories that don't touch on the Golem Invasion at all, just on their own separate stories. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you did, I appreciate it a ton, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!